Frederick Fenimore Powers IV. There were four of us, me, my father, my grandfather, and his father. When my son was born, my grandmother, my dad's mom, wanted me to name my son Frederick Fenimore Powers V. I said, no. And she said, I understand. July the 26th, 1944, in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think the name of the hospital was Piedmont, actually, believe it or not, Piedmont Hospital. So people look at me and say, you don't look like you're fixing to turn 80. I said, yeah, I know. I had to hand that to my mother's people because they all looked young. I mean, I have, and on mother's side, they lived to be 94, 95. Daddy's side, they're in the 80s. And all of them have sharp minds, but they're bedridden. But I intend not to be that way. That's why I try to take care of myself. And I mean, I'm on the treadmill every day, 7 days a week, going a mile. Takes me 30 minutes. It's 2 miles an hour. It's a pretty brisk walk for me because I have some neuropathy in my legs. So, but it wakes up my legs, and it's good for, the way you're made on the inside. So, and the doctor says do it every day, so I do. Well, I used to run back in the day in my 30s. I started out running, and after I got used to doing it, we worked up to like 5 miles a day, 5 days a week. And that was, I mean, you get to where you get antsy if you can't run. I mean, I didn't believe it, but it's true. So I used to love to run. I got to where my back started hurting, and so I couldn't do it anymore, so I walk. So that's what I do now. Yeah, well, running is great for your insides, but it's horrible on your skeletal system. And that's what I went through. What I had wasn't damaged because of the running. It was because of heredity. The degenerative disc disease is what it's called. And my brother and my two sisters have some semblance of it. And if I'm on this treadmill in the morning and my knee, say, starts acting up, I stop. It's not worth it. To push through the pain, no. The women in Mom's family named, starting with my grandmother was Frances, Mom was Frances, my sister's name is Frances. But none of my sister's children are named Frances, so. But I don't know why they like to do that, but I mean, I guess that was a trend back in the day. I have two sisters and a brother. My oldest sister is 18 months older than me. Her name is Frances Hines Powers, and she got married, so it's Frances Wheeler. So, but she is 81. I'll be 80 in July this year. And then my brother, who's 5 years younger than me, is Bruce Law Powers, where the Bruce name pops up. And then my youngest sister, Marion, she's 5 years younger than Bruce, my brother. It's Marion, Bruce, me, Fred, and Frances. Mom passed away in 1995, January of 1995. And she told all of us when she had colon cancer, and she told all of us when she lived with my younger sister, she said, now listen, when I'm not here, you guys do not drift apart. Y'all stay together and love each other. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. So we did a thing called a brother-sister reunion about every 2-3 years. We all get together at my brother's house in Athens because he's got a 4-bedroom house. And he can accommodate us, and we just sit around and we talk. But it's so funny, because if it's been 3 years when we get together, immediately we pick up where we left off. I love it, and the first we've done probably 4 or 5, but the first ones we did, no spouses. So Bruce had his wife was there because she had to cook for us. She had to be there. We would go and do things for a weekend. It would be a Friday, Saturday, and then we'd go home Sunday. But we did one time in Columbus, and we'd done it a couple of times in Athens, and It's just really, it's good. We like it. So consequently, we have all stayed together and we stay in touch. I talk to my brother probably, when I'm not mad at him, I'll talk to him 3 or 4 times a week. And same thing with him. And my sisters will call and check on me occasionally because I probably had more surgery than they have with this thing. And so anyway, but it's funny, if I go to a client's house to tune a piano, which is what I do because I had a music store, a piano store, I had to learn how to tune, see if my technicians were doing it right. But anyway, when I go there, I'll ask them, I said, do you have brothers? Yes, I have brothers and sisters. I said, do y'all do a reunion anytime? Some of them say, oh, well, there's no way I could be in the same room with so-and-so. And some of them say, but no, you know what, that's a great idea. We should try that. Or some of them say, well, they live too far away. But if you plan anything, it can be done. So we love it, by the way. And Mom was right. She knew what to say. But she and Daddy divorced when I was 12. I don't even remember the year. He remarried. Mom never remarried. She was a very quiet, inhibited person. She worked for the VA for years, and she retired and lived at St. John Towers. She lived with me for a while, and when she had a stroke, and so she had to stay with somebody because she lost the use of her voice briefly, but she had speech therapy and got most of it back. But her bodily functions were fine. She had a little bit of what they call aphasia in her face. She didn't have a droopy lip or anything like that, but you could tell. But she was quiet, but we learned a lot from her. And she was a quiet fighter, so to speak, and we all learned to stand up for ourselves. And so she raised all of us by herself. I was 12. Francis was a little older than me. Bruce was 5 years younger. He was 7. And Marion was 2. So she had her hands full. I seemed to, somehow when the father leaves, for whatever reason, the male child tends to, without even realizing it, take over that spot and do things that they didn't normally do. So looking back, I think that's what I did, was I would help her. I would do things for her and help her make decisions, balance her checkbook, stuff like that. From that experience, I gravitate to me, and this is me speaking. If I see somebody that's struggling, a woman that's struggling, I have an empathy for her. Like I've been married twice, I've been divorced twice. But both times I did not want the wife that I left to have to struggle. So like with my first wife, I gave her money every week until she could get on her feet. And I saw that she had a house to live in. I did the same thing with the second wife. First wife was named Sherry. We're good friends, very good friends. Second wife is named Linda. She's like a sister to me. So Linda has a beautiful house. Sherry had a nice house. Sherry remarried. And but she's had a problem with COPD, so she lives with our daughter now, and Wendy and her family. Daddy being in the Army, he was stationed in different areas. We've been overseas. We've been to in about 4 or 5 of the states here in this country. We've lived in North Carolina, lived in Augusta. We've lived in England. We've lived in Japan. I think that we had good times when I was growing up. I don't remember anything really tragic until I got old enough to realize that my father had a drinking problem. He drank too much, and he wasn't abusive physically or mentally with us, but or verbally with us. But I could tell Mother resented it because she didn't have a drinking problem, but they never argued around us. If they did, it was in their room. We had some good times. We lived in Texas in the 50s, 54, 55. We were in San Antonio, Texas. He was stationed at Fort Sam Houston. I think I was I was young. We had just gotten back from Japan, I believe. Yeah. I was 9 in Japan. I loved being in Japan. It was a wonderful experience. Daddy would come home from work and he would say, y'all pack your bags. We'd do a road trip. And we knew what that meant. He wouldn't say where we were going. He didn't even tell Mother. And we were in San Antonio, which was almost in the middle of the state, and we would go down to the coast, Corpus Christi, for the weekend. Oh, I mean, that was a highlight. And he would do that often. We'd take little road trips rather than take a 2-week vacation somewhere. That's what I still do today, because I've gone for a week or so at a time, taking cruises and stuff, but I like the little road trips because it breaks up the monotony of the week. When Mother passed away and Daddy passed away, I pretty much collected everything Mother had from the apartment, and there was a leather-bound zipper case, about like this, that was full of letters that Daddy had written Mother and Mother had written Daddy and other people. When Daddy would go overseas, he would prepare a place for his family. Well, Mother didn't want to go. Not because she didn't want to be with him, she just didn't like to travel. I don't know what her problem was. But it just tore Daddy up. He couldn't understand why. And he would ask his father to go talk to Mom. So finally she would agree and she would go to Japan. It took him forever to get her over to Japan. Once she got over there, they were fine. And we had a great time in Japan. We were there about a year and a half. And I went to an American school on base. It was called Camp Kokura. We lived on the island of Kyushu, which is the lower part of Japan, the southern part. And it's funny, my vivid memory of that is my sister had a bedroom, I had a bedroom, and I shared with Bruce, my brother. And Daddy and Mom had their bedroom. And one night, Daddy always left the hall light on. All the bedrooms ran off the hall. So one night, I woke up, and there was a shadow of a man at the foot of my bed. Could not see his face because the light was behind his head. He spoke Japanese. I didn't know who he was. Scared the you-know-what out of me. So I sat up in the bed, and I froze for about 5 or 6 seconds. Then I said, you better get out of here. My daddy's got a big gun. I was young, 9 years old. So he eventually left, and I waited a minute and a half, and I got up, ran in there and told Daddy. Well, he immediately jumps out of the bed, opens his end table, gets out a .45, which back then it looked like it was a cannon. It was an Army issue. He runs down the hall, the guy's gone. We found a straight razor in my sister's room on the floor by the bed, yeah. He may have dropped it. But what the guy stole was he broke in to get, their money's called yen, Y-E-N. And he stole Mother's yen purse, which she had on the counter in the kitchen. She always kept it there. So the next day, Daddy wanted me to go down and identify him in a lineup. I said, Dad, he had a light behind. His face was dark. I couldn't tell. Well, you still have to go to do a lineup. I said, okay. So we went down, and he had about 4 or 5 lined up, and they all looked alike. And I could not tell, so I said, I don't know, maybe that guy there, number 6 or whatever number. So, but I'll never forget that. That sticks in my mind. I think that we were all lucky. So Daddy was friends with the officer who was over the military police. And they researched and investigated, and they found out how the guy got on post, because they have guards. Turns out the guy was in cahoots with one of the guards, and he would give the guard a piece of what he stole. And the guard would let him in and let him out and stuff like that. So both of them went to jail. When I was in England, I went to an English school called the University. They didn't have grades, they had forms. I was in the 6th form, which was equivalent to the 6th grade. And I wore the uniform, the little beanie hat, the knickers, the pull-up socks. I had to do it if I was going to go to the university. And I enjoyed going there. I made straight A's. And the reason was, if you didn't listen in class, like if you were staring out the window, the teacher would quietly go over, grab a piece of chalk off the blackboard, and throw it at you. And he hit whoever he threw every single time. Then, after that, you got sent to the headmaster. who had the right, because the parents signed a piece of paper, to spank you on the legs with a rod, and you had knickers on, these short. So I didn't want to do that. Never did. That never happened to me. But I did learn a lot because I paid attention. Made straight A's. The one and only time I've ever done that in my life. But the sport was rugby, and so when they would play, I would just be standing there and watching. And one little group, they had a guy that thought he could kick, and he wasn't very good. Well, I knew how to kick a football, so I knew I could kick this rugby thing. It looked like a football. So I went out there and I said, let me try it. So they said, all right, come on. And they said, y'all back up. The Yank wants to try to kick it. I said, go ahead, Yank. Come here for a Yankee. So I kicked it, and it was pretty good. It was better than the other guy. So every day after that, they would pick teams, and they would say, we want the Yank because he can kick. That was my wonderful sports activity. But one time, my brother and I, Bruce and I, were sent to the drugstore to get something, Mom and Dad. It was around the corner from where we lived. We lived in kind of a townhouse. It was 2 stories. It was a nice little English neighborhood where the drugstore was called The Chemist. That was across the front of the board. So we went up there, and I don't know what we were supposed to get, but we were coming back, and 3 ruffians, English ruffians, that's the only word I know, thugs. They were young, a little older than us, and they wanted to rough us up. So Bruce, being younger than me, he goes into a karate stance, knows nothing about karate. But he does, and they go, whoa, wait a minute. So they finally left, and so we hightailed home. We didn't get roughed up or anything, but I remember that vividly about England. The only other thing I remember about England was that's where Daddy met his wife, because Mother took forever to go to England. So him wanting to drink, he would go to the pubs, and there was a lady there named Molly Rhodes, who was very, very pretty. And so he fell for her, and they had an affair, I'm sure, before Mom got there. And then once Mother got there, it was horrible because he didn't want to be around Mother. He wanted to be around this younger woman. Daddy was 20-something years older. Yeah. So anyway, that's where Daddy's commanding officer had a meeting with Mom, and he said, Francis, you just need to go on home. Fred can't do his work. He can't concentrate. He's just messing up. And he said, you just need to go ahead, and if you want to go home. She said, yes, I do. I don't want to stay here. So we all left and went home. That's when she filed for divorce, and we went our way and he went his way. It took us a long time to get back into Daddy's sphere, his space. We resented Molly and resented Daddy for what he had done. But between you and me now, after I've read those letters, I think it was 50-50. Just as much Mom's fault for not wanting to be with him as it was Daddy's fault for, going another way. The Texas stay when we were there in San Antonio was fun. England was kind of rough, but we had good days and bad days. And then when we came back, we settled actually at the beach, at Hunting Island State Park. My uncle, who was my mom's, he was Mother's brother, Uncle Madison Hines Roberts. He was a pediatrician. And he started Henrietta Eggleston Hospital for Children in Atlanta. It's not called that now. But it was he himself, and I think it was either a nurse or a nun that he worked with, and they started it. He was a very quiet, private man, but he did a whole lot for the community and for the patients and for the medical community down in, and this was in Atlanta. So we lived at his cottage. He had a 3-bedroom cottage on Hunting Island, and we lived there we came back like in April. We stayed there through the end of the summer, and then we came back to Augusta. And we lived on Oakland Avenue. Mother was able to get a house. And we lived on Oakland Avenue for many years. And I left there and got married, and everybody went their way from there. And then Mother finally sold the house, and she had the stroke and had to go to St. John Towers. But I remember when she sold that house, it was supposed to be a family of 4, but there wound up being about 8 people that lived in that house. They bought it for $100 down. That was it. And Mother, she made a little bit on it, but not a lot. But it infuriated me. I was old enough to know, and I asked the realtor, I said, "Wow, what happened?" He said, "Well, that's just that's the way it is. That people would buy it, but that's all they wanted to do." So, and Mother had to sell it. She wanted to get out from under it. I wanted to be a surgeon. There was a doctor who, when I was 7 years old, I fell off of a stair. I lost my balance and fell off the stairs at a Bible school. And where I landed on the ground, there was a jar, a jelly jar, broken, and my neck hit it. I still have a scar right here. Missed the jugular by a very small amount. So they took me to a doctor named Dr. Frank Jones. And this was 1951. And he sewed me up in his office. He sewed me up and wrapped my head in a whole bandage. Looked like I had a football helmet on. And then I met him again when I had a couple other small operations, and I really admired him. I had to have my appendix out. I was in a lot of pain, so one of our relatives was also a doctor. Will Cranston was his name. He was just a regular general practitioner, but he knew Frank Jones. All the doctors knew each other. So he asked Frank to meet him at the emergency room, and they looked at everything and said, well, his appendix has to come out. So they operated on me, and I had some complications, and I couldn't pass anything because what was called the mesentery that holds your intestines together had wrapped around that area where the appendix was, and was pinching off part of the intestine so nothing would pass through. Well, you got to be able to do that. And he came in, Frank Jones came in, and my belly had swollen up like a watermelon. He's thumping it, and he said, Fred, you got a blockage. I said, I wonder what that was. He said, we need to go back in again and do an exploratory. So he did. I got a big old scar here, and he found it, the mesentery, and he clipped it, and pretty simple once he found it. And everything was fine, but I was 17 then when that happened. So I really liked Dr. Jones. He was very kind to me, and I remember there was one elective surgery I needed to have. I had a cyst removed on my lower back, and I went to him, I said, Dr. Jones, I don't have any insurance, and so, is there any way, what can we do? He said, well, I tell you what. He said, I will not come and visit you as much as I should do. I normally make rounds every day, and it's like back then, it was like $50 a visit. Now it's way up there. But anyway, he said, I just won't come. He said, if something happens, I'll tell the nurse to call me, and then I can come. So he said, that'll save you a lot of money. I said, okay, and it did. It helped a lot. But I wanted to be a surgeon, so when I enrolled in college, I graduated from Richmond Academy in 1962. I had a high school diploma. Went from there to, back then it was called Augusta College. It's Augusta University now. And I did 2 years at Augusta College, freshman and sophomore year. And they were pre-med is what I was, that was the course I was enrolled in. I wanted to do pre-med because I wanted to be a doctor. And I was able to, I got some scholarships to go to the University of Georgia, so I went up there for a full year. That was back when they were on the quarter system. I believe they do semesters now, but I was there for 4 quarters. I went every quarter for a year, so that meant in the summer too. And one of the courses I took was called Qualitative Analysis, which is a chemistry course. And I am like, holy moly. There was the seating was like an arena. It was elevated up, and you could not go to class and have somebody sit in for you, because the graduate student would come and look at the back of the seat and it had a number on it, and if it was empty, you were out. If somebody sat in for you, he didn't know who you were. You were there. If you had a question you couldn't ask during class, you had to go get in line at the teacher's office after class was over. So I think the first test I made a 5 out of 100 points. And I think the high score was a 50. So I'm like, I can't do this. So I went to the administrative offices, got my counselor, and I said, you know, I wanted to be a doctor, but I don't know, I can't do this stuff. And so she said, well, she said, let's do this. Let's give you a personality test, see where your interests lie. I said, okay. So they did, and they said, I think that you would enjoy psychology. I said, really? They said, yeah. So I changed my major. Majored in psychology, got a degree in it with a minor in sociology. Absolutely fell in love with it. Absolutely fell in love with it. The very first teacher I had, Psych 101, was a German guy. He was about 5'7", light hair, talked with a thick German accent, but you could understand him. Didn't take anything off of anybody, but he was good. He was very good. So I followed that through at Georgia for a couple of years and then came back home and went to Augusta College again, enrolled back there. In the meantime, I got married to my first wife, Sherry Turner, and we had Wendy was the first child, and then Chris was born, the son, about two and a half years after that. And so I would have to go to night school because I'd work during the daytime. One of the things I remember about that was one professor I had was a clinical psychiatrist at medical college. And he would teach at night at Augusta College because they had a shortage of teachers, and he volunteered. He was excellent. This was back when you could smoke in class. That's how far back it was. He would bring his buddies in who were psychiatrists, and he would talk about patients without telling anybody who they were. Wouldn't even tell if they were male or female, that they had, and what was wrong with them and how they helped them and this kind of stuff. And we would sit there glued to our seats. We didn't want the class to end. Well, it was over I think I got out of class at 10:30 at night. So I'd go home and I would stay up until, because you got to wind down. You can't just jump in the bed and go to sleep. Till about 12, and I would read my lessons or whatever. But I really enjoyed that. My first job was downtown at Bowen Brothers Hardware. A lot of y'all won't remember that because it wasn't open that too long. They had the first escalator in Augusta because they had a second floor. And I worked there. I was 15. I worked there for a week until they found out I was 15. And I couldn't do that. You had to be 16 or older. So they let me go. So the next job I had was at Sears. And I was in the sporting goods department, and it's so funny, we'd do inventory periodically, and they would put me counting fish hooks. That was so fun. Very boring. But I enjoyed doing that, working there too. In fact, I was a student at the college, at Augusta College, but I was not married there. But I was still working at Sears when I wasn't going to school. And they asked me if I wanted to be on their fashion board. Sears was creating a fashion board. I said, what is that? You simply walk down a little runway and you model men's clothing. I said, do I have to talk? And they go, no, we prefer you not. Just walk down, smile, and I said, all right, I'll try it. So I did. They had, I think, 3 girls and 1 me. And we did the fashion board thing. It was fun. It didn't last long. I asked the Dusty Rhodes was the manager of Sears. He was there, and I met him and became friends with him, just not real close. But I asked him one time, I said, Mr. Rhodes, if I want to have a career with Sears, what do you want me to go to school? What major should I? He said, you do whatever you want. He said, we just want you to go and get an education. If you get a college education, we know that you are disciplined, We know that you can listen. We know that you can be responsible. So he said, we're going to train you the way we want you to learn. You go ahead and get whatever degree you want. So I said, oh, terrific. I was 21 working, I think I was working for Sears at the time. And so it was a experience. Sherry and I were new. We had not raised babies, so we, as all couples do, you struggle with how to raise a child, and you try to get advice where you can. But Sherry was a good mother. She had a lot of instinct and stuff like that. Linda was a great mother too. They both of them, both my wives had done really good raising kids. After about 2 years, we were in North Carolina, in Mount Gilead, and Chris came along, my son, and he was a smart little kid, and there was such a difference between Wendy and Chris, because Chris was very thrifty, watched his money, he knew exactly how much money he had. I didn't teach him this, he just knew how to do it. Wendy was a spendthrift. She would go to him and she would say, Chris, can I borrow $1.84? I need to do so and so and so. So he'd loan it to her, and then he would make her sign a note, and he would tape it to her door. Funniest thing I ever saw. He was a good kid, but when he was 12, he got leukemia. And the only way we knew it was they did a blood check, and he had an increase in his white blood count. In fact, it was, I think normal is like between 8 and 12,000 white blood cells. I don't know, but his was up around almost 900,000. Yeah. And what leukemia does, it's immature white blood cells that clog up your vessels. So eventually everything closes down. So anyway, he got it, and Dr. Slayer, I told Dr. Ben Kay, Sr., and Joe Green. Joe Green was a pediatrician. Ben Gay was a urologist. They both together came and told Sherry and I when Chris was in the hospital what they found. And of course we were devastated. But anyway, I said, I want the best in Augusta. And they both said, almost in unison, that'd be Michael Slayer. I said, can you get him? They said, well, we'll try. So they called him. He came down with his nurse, who Chris fell in love with. I remember the talk. And Chris looked this way and he says, am I going to die? And Slayer says, no. No, of course not. He said, I'm your doctor now. He said, you're not going to die. And so he said, we're going to do some things with you to help you get your blood back into where it should be. Well, because he had so many white blood cells in his body, Slayer had to do something pretty quick. So Slayer called a protege of his at Emory and said, I want to use the thing that they give you where they take your blood and they cleanse it and they put it back in you. I don't know what it's called, transfusion or something like that. But he said, if I can do that and filter off those white blood cells, it'll bring this patient's blood level back where it should be. So the guy says, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work. So he did it, and boom, in 6 hours, Chris went from 900,000 down to about 30,000. His color came back. Yeah, his mood came back. He felt better. He ate. So he got him stabilized and got him back where he should be. And then he started the oncology regimen. So Chris fought it for like 22 months. And then with leukemia, the first remission is a good, healthy remission. You do fine. But eventually you'll have another remission. And if you come out of the second remission, if you go into a third remission, you're lucky. Most of the time you don't. Yeah. So he didn't get to that third remission. He was 14. And his heart just stopped, basically. I mean, I was at home, and Sherry always stayed at the hospital with him constantly. And so when he did pass away, she couldn't call me. So the nurse called me, and I went down there, and I didn't know where to go. I was hysterical. And the Episcopal priest, Bill Bradford was his name, I think, William Bradford, we met coincidentally at the door, and I said, I said, are you here for Chris? He says, yes. I said, I don't know how to find him. He said, you follow me. I think he was God sent between you and me. So anyway, we got up there, and Sherry said, "Don't go in. Remember him how he was." And I regret doing that. I didn't go in and see him, but I regret doing that. But I went out. You could go out on the roof wherever Chris was of the hospital, and so I was out there with Sherry, and we were just agonizing. And the nurse who called me came out, and she, for some reason, she wanted me to know she was the one that called me. "My name's Jane, and I just want you to know I was the nurse that called you." I said, "Well, thank you. I appreciate it." It's uncommon for the child to die first. The parents are supposed to die, and the child buries the parents. You don't bury your child. It was a long road coming back out of that, but we were both able to do it. The hurt and the wound and the hole in your heart doesn't go away ever, but with time, the pain gets less intensive. I was talking to a lady, she's a nurse over in River Island, and I was telling her about it, and I started breaking up. I had to stop. I said, "I don't know where that came from." And she said, "Oh, I understand." And I looked at her and said, "We me too." It's a very emotional thing, and it doesn't really ever leave you. But we have fond memories of what we did together, Sherry and me and Wendy and Chris, and we talk about Chris all the time. I remember the very first Christmas. Chris died in March. He died on March the 27th of 1984. He's buried over at Westover. I went and bought 4 plots. Back then, Daddy went with me, and my brother Bruce went with me, and we bought the plots because we had to put Chris somewhere. And the plots were $624 a piece, and I bought 4 of them because I had one for me, one for Chris, one for me, one for Sherry, and one for Wendy, if that happened. We had the funeral. It was at St. Paul's Church, and it was packed because he was going to Aquinas at the time. And I remember that I had to write his obituary. Sherry couldn't do it. She was devastated because she said she told Chris she wouldn't let anything happen to him. He's going to be all right. And of course he died, and she had no control over that, but it still got to her. She became a licensed practical nurse because of that. I don't know, I guess it was a way of just trying to fix it. But anyway, I had to write his obituary, and so I called the school, and I got the head nun there, Sister Mary somebody, I don't know who she was, but she was so nice. She knew Chris very well. And I told her what had happened. She knew he'd been sick, and she was very sorry and very sad about it. I said, "Can you help me write his obituary?" She said, "Yeah." So we started talking. I started writing, and he had won 2 or 3 awards I didn't even know about because I was busy working selling pianos. And I was thinking, "God, Fred, you should have missed a lot." So, and that's what happens when you work 6 days a week, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day. You miss your family. You miss them growing up. I realize it now, but it's too late. But the funeral was at St. Paul's. It was packed. I mean, packed. Probably 600 people there. Because she said, "Do you mind," when I was talking to the sister, "do you mind if I make an announcement over the intercom to the school about Chris?" I said, "No." So she did. And I think that's why everybody showed up. But we got through that. It took several years for us to work through it. We had to, both of us had to have grief therapy because you have to grieve. We've learned if you don't grieve and get it out of you, it will be there when you're 100 years old. And there was Peter Thomas. He was a priest at St. Paul's. He was licensed he's a licensed therapist in that specific area. So we went to him for counseling. First of all, we went together. And we found out that men can handle and, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, process their child's death not faster, but they understand it and move on a little quicker than the women do. The women tend to take it slower and want to talk about it, and men are kind of like cavemen. They go in the cave and they fix it. If they can't fix it, they don't talk about it. But men tend to move on. Now, Wendy was having a really rough time, and she, to this day, she doesn't go to the cemetery to visit his grave. I go occasionally. It's been a long time, 84 now. It's a long time. But somebody asked her one time, why don't you go? And she said, well, I just have some memories I don't want to remember. So I said, well, I was listening. I said, Wendy, that's fair. That's very fair. Everybody understands that. But I think that we were both, mostly me, I was angry at God because I thought he could. Sherry and I lived on Franklin Street out in South Augusta off of Wheelus Road. And Wendy was our first child. She was a beautiful child. She still is. And we lived there, and we had a good life there. And I think her father and mother owned the house, and they rented it to us for $50 a month, if you can imagine that. Well, I mean, they probably could have gotten more than that, but he wanted his grandchildren around us. I was butting heads with her father. He had turned a senior, so I had a chance to go to North Carolina to work for a textile company. My uncle owned a company up there, and he asked me if I wanted to come up there and interview. I said, well, do I have a job? He said, I don't know. If you pass the interview, you do. He was that way. So anyway, I did, and we stayed up there a couple of years working for a textile plant, back when they made polyester suits and stuff like that. I had started out as a second shift supervisor, and there were like 12 stations where they dyed the yarn or the gray goods, whatever it's called, and then went through different stations where they formed it and made it and put it on a roll. And they told me, they said, the manager of the plant said, the way you're going to learn how to do this is you go spend time with the operator. He'll teach you everything you know. And then when you finish that station, yada, yada, yada. So I did, and I enjoyed doing that. It was fun. I had a lot of fun doing that. But I realized I would like to have had my own business. So I talked to Mr. Turner about it. He had Turner Music House at the time. I asked him, I said, Ed, would you ever consider selling your business? And he said, yeah. I said, would you sell it to me? He said, I don't know if you have the credit to buy it. I said, well, if I get the credit to buy it. He said, yeah. I had worked my way up to being a production control manager over about 20 mills, and I would order yarn for the different mills from the inventory they'd take. And I was doing pretty good, making pretty good money. And Mr. Turner said, if you come back home, I'll sell you the business. So we moved back. Took him 6 years to turn around and sell it. He did not want to leave it. But I had a partner at the time, and we finally bought it and paid him. So. Yeah, I know that from running my business, my secretary had to write a lot of stuff down, and we had to have multiple records, and you had to have file cabinets with paper records of people, and then you had it was a paper crisis. I mean, it was everywhere. And so you had to have copies of everything. So then computers came out, and we bought a computer, and it scared the secretary to death because she was an elderly lady. She did not like computers, but she learned how to use it, and finally she retired, and I got somebody that knew how to use it. So that helped a lot. We put all the records in the computer, and we kept it in the computer storage, whatever that's called. And of course, the computer was this deep and about that wide, and but we used that computer for, 15, 20 years, even though it was behind the times. And the only bookkeeping system we had was one written by a guy. We sold Baldwin pianos. We were a Baldwin franchise dealer. Turner Music House was. And the only franchise dealer was The only operating system that we could use was done by a Baldwin dealer, and it was a nice system to start with, but then it got really hard to use, so we looked for something else, never could find it. We bought the business from Ed Turner Sr., Bill Giesler and I. He was my partner. He was a band director at Glen Hills High School, and he worked part-time at the store. And then he and I became real close, real good friends. He was very smart. And we wanted to buy the business. And so we got us a lawyer, and Ed Turner helped us pick him out, and Ed wanted to sell the business. I think Ed's eyes were bigger than his stomach, so to speak. But when you're talking about food or something. But anyway, so we talked with him. We said, well, how much do you want for the business? And we were talking about all the inventory. You can't buy the Baldwin franchise. It has to be transferred. It has to be approved and transferred. But you can buy the inventory on the floor, the sheet music and the trucks, delivery, all the whole shooting match. And some goodwill. There's always goodwill in there. So he says, well, I want $125,000 for it. And we went, well, that's a lot of money. So we talked to the people at Baldwin, and there was a man up there who was over all the dealers. His name was Joe Wolf. And he was brilliant. And he says, Fred, that's a way bunch of blue sky. Too much. He said, the biggest, most expensive business I've seen was 50 grand. He said, 125 is out of sight. He said, I know Ed Turner. He said, I know what he's doing. So we met again with Ed Turner, and Bill and I had decided to arrive at a price of 75. And we thought it was a little high. In fact, I asked the lawyer, John Thompson was his name. He's retired now. I said, is that a good price? He said, you can look at it two ways, Fred. If you stay in it for the short term, no, it's too high. I said, what do you mean short term? He said, well, if you do it for 5 years and quit. But he said, if you make a career out of it, he said, it's a bargain. I said, really? He goes, yeah. So I said, okay. So we offered him 75. Of course, I said, well, that's our offer. You think about it. We got up and walked out of the office. And what we were going to do was buy the business from him, incorporate it, and have shares. And out of the 100% shares, 100 shares of whatever it is, Ed Sr. would have 48% of the stock. And I would have 26%. Is that 100%? 26 and 48? Yeah, that's 100%, isn't it? 26, yeah. Okay, I'd have 26, Bill would have 26. But when Bill and I got together, we had 52% controlling interest, so we could do whatever we wanted. We didn't tell Ed that. We figured it, he's smart, he can figure it out himself. So he was good with that. He said, yeah, I'll take half the stock, that's fine. It wasn't half, it was 48, but we didn't argue with him. So he never realized it until, he didn't even realize what he had sold. He just was looking at 75,000. I said, we're gonna have to pay you by the month until it's paid out. And he said, well, you can just pay me interest. You don't have to pay me the principal until later. Well, that was a ploy, because what happens would be that we'd pay him interest for, like, if it was a 10-year note, 5 or 6 years, and then come into 10 years, who's gonna come up with 75 grand? Nobody. So we did pay interest for a while. And then Bill Giesler got a dealership up in Knoxville, Tennessee. And he was a Baldwin dealer up there, so he left. He moved his family up there. So I had the whole thing. At the time, we had the Walton Way store and a mall store. And I had my house mortgaged. And Bill had his house mortgaged, which the bank released him so he could open up shop up there of any liability with the loan. So what I did was I decided with my secretary, so we sat down, we talked about it. I said, let's make an invisible employee. Every week, let's decide how much we need to set back or to have to pay Ed off at the end of the note. I think we had like 6 years, five or 6 years to go. So she said, okay. So it came up to about $1,250 a month, including interest. So she took that and divided it into 4 and wrote a check every week to come up with that amount. And the first check we had, I called Ed Turner. He was at Turner Keyboards on Washington Road. He was in town, so I called him. I said, "You gonna be there a while?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Can you talk?" He said, "Yeah, come on." So I went over there, and I walked in there, and I said, "You know, I'm buying the business from you." He said, "Yeah, I know, you've been paying me interest." I said, "Well, I want to start paying you principal and interest." And I handed him the check, and he looked at it, and he says, "You can't do this." I said, "Why? Why can't I?" He said, "Because you just can't do this." I said, "I'll do it." And I said, "I'll tell you what else. I'll never miss a payment," which I didn't. Never missed a payment. He said, okay, that's fine. So every month, he lived down in Beaufort on Pawkey's Island. He had a little shack he'd bought down there that they'd turned into a really nice place now. And he did most of the building on it. But Lisa, who owns Turner Keyboards now, was kind of like his secretary, and I would give the check to them every month. I'd take it over there and hand it to them, and they would do whatever. But I paid him off. When the last check came, I went over there, and he was still in Beaufort, and Mrs. Turner had passed away in 1976. She had a heart attack. And I took the last check over there, and Lisa was there, and I went in, and I told her, I said, "This is the last one. We're paid up." And she said, "Hang on." She opened the computer and saw, yes, that is right. So I gave it to her. I said, "I wish your mom was here to see this." She said, "She's seeing it. She's watching it." So anyway, I owned the business, lock, stock, and barrel. And I was so pleased and proud with that. So, I remember when cell phones came out, portable phones, and there was a thing called bag phones. They weighed about 12 pounds. I got one. And it was a store phone, but you plug it in, I think you plug it in a cigarette lighter. And that was the strongest phone. I mean, the amperage that it used was much more than what the cell phones have today. But I remember the first time I used that, I went to Atlanta, and I was on 285, and I called Mom back in Augusta. "Where are you, son?" "Mother, you won't believe it." I said, "Yeah, I got this new bag phone." "What?" "Bag phone, it's a portable phone." "You have a phone in your car?" She was old, I had to explain it to her. But that was fun, I remember that. But things have evolved a lot. I mean, computers made it easier to keep track of inventory and to plan things and do payroll, and we learned to use QuickBooks and stuff like that. So it really helped a lot. And cell phones came out. I would carry a cell phone. It was a red flip phone. Hated it. But I'd carry it in my car, and I never would use it. But if they needed me, they could reach me. Or if I needed them, if I was out in the field or something, I could call them. So that was the only reason I carried. But now it's part of my body, like everybody else. But yeah, it's advanced. It's a good thing the way it's moved, and I'm glad because it does help. What you hold in your hand now was about 18 different things that you had before in the past. So in that respect, it's a good thing. But the only thing that I don't like about it is the internet. It's very dangerous. I was listening to, coming back from my tuning in on John's Road today, I was listening to a thing on the Good News Network, 91.7, and they were talking about how the internet is so seductive to everybody. Kids start at the age of 7, and they are groomed by, if they're playing a video game, these predators will play the game and get a hold of them. It's horrible. And so if you're a parent and you give your child anything that's internet connected, you better know what you're doing, or don't give it to them. If you don't have time to deal with it, then don't give it to them. That's the way the thing went. But it's done well. for everybody, I think, and it's a good thing, but it just has to be monitored and taken care of. When I was growing up and when I got married, I ran my house. This is before Chris died. I ran my house like I was the only word I can think of is a dictator. If I said it, it was law. It had to do. I had to win the argument. I was the good guy. I was the bad guy. Sherry was the good guy. So we had and Sherry knew it worked actually. If I told them not to do something, they would go to their mother, and she said, "Well, we'll figure out something, at least give them some hope." So as I look back on that, that wasn't necessary. I was insecure. That's why it had to be my way or the highway. People that try to control things are very insecure. They want everything. They want to finish the sentence for you. They want to know the outcome before it happens. They want to be secure in that experience. So they create it and they develop it and they write the ending for it. And that's not good. It's not good at all. So once Chris died, it gave me a whole new view of how to look at things. And I'm not the dictator I used to be. Now, when Sherry and I divorced after Chris died, and I'm not blaming it on Chris, but they say that if you have any kind of problems and a child dies in the family, the problems are magnified 1,000 times. I don't know why, but they say that's the way it is. So that may have been what led to it. I don't know. I'm not going to say. I met Linda, and Linda and I got married, and she already had 4 kids. She had 3 by Bill Nadolsky, her first husband. And she had a child, Melissa, when she was young. And I think Melissa's in her 40s now, but she's a sweetheart. They all are good, but I helped her raise. I knew Stevie Lynn when she was 3 years old. That's when I met her. And she's 30-something now, middle 30s. Married, got kids, married to a great guy. And so I would let Linda be the main disciplinarian. And the reason was we went to counseling before we were married and after we were married. And Dr. Jody Fry, he's a psychologist, I believe, he was the guy we went to, and he said, "Fred, you can't discipline the kids. You have to back Linda up." I said, "But I'm the man of the house." He said, "No, you're not. She is." I said, "How's that going to work?" He said, "If there's any punishment to be meted out, she does it. You back her up. Y'all have a united front, and it'll work." But he said, if you try to jump in there and take it, they're going to go to mama. They're going to resent you because you're not the father, and that's going to be their favorite excuse. So he said, you just, let her do it. So I said, okay. And he said, and the other thing is, he said, you have to become friends with Bill Nadolsky. I said, I can't. I hate him. He said, no. He said, I understand that, but you have to become friends with him. I said, why? He said, it's for the kids. It's not for you. It's not for Linda. It's for the kids. You've had your youth. They haven't. They need to have their daddy. And Linda's always felt that way, that Bill should be a part of their life. And he was. And Bill was great. When they came, Bill and Linda arrived at child support, and he gave her what money she needed, and every month he was right on clockwork. And if there was a special event, like if the kids had to go to Christian camp for the summer for a couple of weeks, and it was several $100s, and we may not have had it, she'd call him. He said, sure, and he'd write the check. He was wonderful in that respect. So he and I became real, not close friends, but we speak, we're civil to each other, and it worked out. Today, and then Linda and I, for some reason, we just drifted apart. I mean, I don't know that it was a good match and all. Maybe we were on the rebound, but she kind of hesitated to get married. In fact, she told me the other day, she said, when I was fixing to go into the church and Mom was me, it was just me and her, I asked Mom, she said, Mom, I don't know if I can do this. I said, what? So she said, yeah. But we did, and it's been a good arrangement. So we raised the 3 kids that Linda had with Bill, Michael, Shelby, and Stevie. And it was a great time. We had a wonderful time raising them. I mean, I had more good times than bad times. There were always some discipline problems because Michael was hard-headed, and Shelby would aggravate Michael, and there'd constantly be a fight between the two of them. She would pick at him just so that he would pay attention to her, I think. I asked Melissa, I said, why does she do that? Why does she pick? That's how she shows she loves you. I said, bull. But she said, no, that's really how she shows. I said, well, it's weird. But anyway, they're raised. They all have a college education because Bill had set money back. He and Linda, when they were married, agreed to do that. And I think that he had the insurance policies he cashed in for each of them. So he paid for all their colleges. They all have bachelor degrees. Stevie has a civil engineering degree. And her dad, Bill, is a civil engineer, but he's licensed beyond that. He's also a surveyor. And Shelby has a bachelor's degree. I think it was in marketing from Augusta University. Michael has a bachelor and a master's in physics. Married a woman, Laurel, sweet as she can be, has a bachelor and master's in physics. They both talk the same language. And they make tons of money, all of them. More money than you and I ever thought about making. I don't know what you make, I don't want to know. More money than I would ever make. But I mean, it's amazing. And Michael is so smart. This company he works for, he collects data and does something with it. Or he'd take, if they have a program and it's got a bug in it, they send it to him, he fixes it. He showed me his office one time. He's got 3 big monster computer screens. And I said, what do you do? He said, well, they send me a software problem, I fix it and send it back. And they pay him big bucks, and he never leaves the house. He works in his pajamas and it's wonderful. I'm glad. And he can live off of $5 for a month. That's how thrifty he is. So I'm sure he's socking a lot of it away, which is good. He should. But Shelby married Ben Burwinkle, and Ben's a super guy. He works down at Plant Vogel. He's very smart, very technical. He doesn't have a lot of college education, if any. I know he went to Augusta Tech for some electrical engineering program, but he can fix anything. I'm serious, he can fix anything. I have tuned for people who worked with him that I didn't know, and we just got to talking. And they said, Ben Burwinkle, I know him. He can fix anything. So I told Ben that, and of course he's very humble. He didn't want to hear it. You know, I don't. But anyway, they have 3 kids of their own. Shelby has a child that she had when she was 16, and Linda and I raised her. Her name's Kendall, and she lives with her grandmother now, with Linda now. She's at Augusta University. She's as smart as Shelby is. And she is getting a degree in criminology. She's 21, getting a degree in criminology with a minor in math. She hated math when she was growing up. But we agreed, the 2 of us agreed to raise her, which we did. And so I had this store, Powers Pianos, for 38 years. It was like a cash register now that I look back on it. We took cruises, me and all the kids and Linda. We went to the beach. Bill had bought, at Linda's suggestion, a timeshare down at Edisto. Well, he hated the beach, so he gave it to her when they divorced. He said, I don't want it, you can have it. So they transferred it, and it was hers. We went down there for 11 years, every spring. She thought she had gotten it at the time when Masters happened, but it was actually pretty cold. Sometimes it'd be warm, sometimes it'd be cold. We didn't care. We went down there, and they went swimming in the beach, and we'd go eat, stuff like that. But it was a great place to go. But I was able to afford to do all that because of the business, looking back on it, and legitimately be able to do it. I paid for Wendy getting married. I paid for Linda and I getting married through the store. legitimately. I paid for Linda's daughter, Melissa, getting married when she married Philip Buck. So I was thankful that, looking back on it, that I had that I could do. I could do that. I mean, we bought cars. I would buy cars for me, and they would be company cars. That way, you could run to the store. I thought nice stuff. I bought a red Monte Carlo one time, and I didn't want to get it. But we were looking, and Linda said, "Why don't you want that?" She said, "I can tell you want it. Why don't you get it?" I said, "I don't know. It's red, number one. I've heard that if you buy a red car, you get a ticket quicker." She said, "That's baloney. If you want it, why don't you get it?" So I got it. Loved it. Oh, I kept it. I take care of a car. I kept it for 8 years. Sold it to Michael for $2,100. I called him one day. I said, "Do you want to buy this? I'm fixing to get another car." He said, "Yes." "How much you want for it?" I said, $2,100. He said, "Okay." So he came to the store that afternoon with $2,000. He had been saving. Plus his daddy gave him some money. He said, "I'm $100 short." I said, "That's fine. When you get it, let me know." I signed the title over and he took it. Well, Michael at the time didn't take care of cars. So I went over, one day I came home from work and he had the dash, he was in the driveway and he had the dashboard of the Monte Carlo out and he was putting a stereo in. I didn't want to look at it. Had a dent on the door, Michael just didn't take care of stuff. Anyway, he kept the car. I said, "Michael, whatever happened to that car?" It quit running on me in Virginia when I was going up to Chicago. I said, "What'd you do?" "I left it on the side of the road." I said, "Michael, you did not." "I did. I left it on the side of the road." I said, "Michael, that's stupid." He said, "Well, what was I supposed to do? I didn't have the money to get it fixed." I said, "How'd you get from there to where you were going?" He said, "I thumbed a ride." See, Michael, he was brilliant, but he didn't have a lot of street smarts at the time. He's a lot smarter now. I mean, he is. He turned out extremely well. I'm very pleased, very proud, and love all of them. But Linda has said several times that she could not have raised them without my help, and she really appreciated everything that I did to help. So I've raised 2 sets of kids. My advice to what I would tell Fred was ease up. Don't take everything so seriously. Don't be such a control freak. Enjoy who you have around you because they're not always going to be there. And you think, "Oh, yeah, right." But no, it's true. It's true. And be unafraid to take a risk. Don't be afraid to come out of your comfort zone. Take a risk. We had the mall. We had the store on Walton Way, and we opened up the mall store, and that was risky because Bill had to put up his house. I had to put up my house. It was more collateral than we needed, and it was really funny how that worked. We wanted that so bad. We wanted to be in that store because Rich's was the big promoter, the anchor store of getting it going. And the people out of Atlanta sent us a letter and said, "Would you like to be in the mall? You would be the only piano and organ dealer there." We said, "Yeah." "When's it going to happen?" "Well, it's down the road." Well, 6 years later, it happened. So we needed the loan. I think the loan was $35,000. And we had both our houses up, which was way over what we needed. So we went to the guys we dealt with on a daily basis at SunTrust Bank, and they said they couldn't approve the loan. I said, "Well, somebody's got to." So we went to their boss, and they said, "Well, I can't approve this. You don't have enough. You've got too many liabilities. Blah blah." The bank always, they're like a casino. They always come out ahead. So we finally went. I said, "I'm going." Bill, I said, "Let's go to the chairman of the board, Whitney O'Keefe." Bill says, "Really?" I said, "Yeah. Let's just forget these people." So we made an appointment with Whitney O'Keefe, the nicest man I ever met. His office was on the top of the SunTrust building. And went in his office. There was nothing in there but a couple of chairs. There was a big, beautiful desk, nothing on the desk, a couple of mementos and a picture and a phone. So we asked him, we explained what we wanted, and he said, I know what your loan's about. And he said, you've always had the approval for that loan. He said, it's just that you've got too much inventory. I said, well, why in the hell didn't one of your people tell us that? I said, Mr. O'Keefe, I can have that transferred with one phone call to another floor planner, is what we called it, and it would take it out of your liability. He said, do it, and you got the loan. I said, thank you. We got up and left. We weren't in his office 6 minutes. Always had the loan, but those idiots wouldn't tell us. So anyway, we had it done. The other company was Transamerica. The lady, I knew her, and she said, yeah, absolutely, we'll take it. So we got the loan, we built a store, and O'Keefe and Bill and I became friends. But, I would say to somebody, don't be afraid to take a risk. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone, and be patient, and be humble. Don't be so arrogant that you know it all, because you don't. You don't know it all. I don't know it all today. I learn every day. And the other thing is, accept Jesus. I said, he's a good man. A lot of people, Linda is a social worker with 2 degrees, a bachelor and a master. She got an education, she got a good salary, she's got a job she loves to do. She complains about it all the time, but she loves it. But she said that she's noticed that people who are dying, that's her specialty, is hospice. And people who are dying, if they have an unresolved issue, or they don't know Jesus Christ, or they don't know where they're going when they die, they're scared to death. They don't want to die. And they're antsy and all, but she said, flip the coin over. People who've accepted Christ and they know where they're going to go when they die, they're at peace. Some of them are ready to go. They want to get up there, see what it's like. And I know when Mom was sick with colon cancer, Barry Clanton, our pastor at the time, he came and he went to visit her. And he walked in the room and he says, she knew who she was, and he says, Frances, I want to ask you, do you know Jesus? And she said, oh, yes, we are very good friends. I know him well. He's helped me throughout my life. So he said, good. So that would be my advice, would be to tell my younger self to accept Jesus sooner than I did. There are not a lot of tuners around. I have a lot of clients. I started out, when I first retired in 2008, I had 50 clients after a year, because I took my records home with me and I started calling them. I got bored and went on to do at the house. Nothing to do, so I could tune, so I went out there and I started tuning. And the second year, I had about 150. Well, now I have 300 clients in 15 churches. What happened to my retirement? Gone bye-bye. But I love it. I've had a passion for tuning. And it's not the actual physical act of tuning, which I do, I think, pretty good. And some people say it's very good. But it's the interaction with the customer. When I had my store, I would interact with the customers. So that was very, very nice. I enjoyed that. Well, don't have the store, can't do that anymore. So when I go to a customer's house, if it's a brand new customer, I will go in and say, tell me about this piano. In other words, tell me about yourself. And they'll tell me about the piano, and I can read from that whether it's a 7-year-old starting on their first lesson or whether it's a concert artist. And so all of my tunings are good, but if it's a concert artist, they're real good. They gotta be. They're gonna have me back there. And 2, you learn about the customer, and you get on a very friendly basis. And some of the customers were all on a first name basis. I'm finally doing what I enjoy doing, and so I'm going to take care of myself so I can keep doing it. My advice would be to my younger self was continue to take care of yourself. I got into the jogging in the beginning, and then I realized the good it was doing for me. So I kept up the exercise in some manner. As the degenerative disc disease progressed and I got to where I couldn't run, I walked. Then I got to where I couldn't walk 2 miles, 3 miles. And so I got a treadmill where I could hold on to, and so, but I've had a lot of surgeries. I had 4 discs replaced in 2015, and I've got 8 screws and a plate in my back there, lower back. And in November, I had 4 discs fused in my neck. And I had, this hand went numb, and the neurosurgeon said, well, it's not because of your neck, it's because of the ulnar nerve that runs across your elbow. He said, we'll relocate it, and I got a little scar there. And so I came through that with flying colors. Every operation I've had with Dr. Greg Otting has been fantastic. Never had any pain other than the incision pain. And they've all worked. And his advice to me is one word. He said, when you go home, walk. People that walk heal. I said, okay. And that's what I do every day. And it's fantastic advice. You keep your weight down. You keep your body in good shape. I learned to cook. I do my own cooking now. And I have several recipes I do that are pretty good. I mean, I'll cook chili or spaghetti, or there's one I do with turkey sausage and Alfredo sauce, onions, and mushrooms. To die for. You put it over rice. And it's so simple. It's nothing. Multiple ways to cook chicken. That's a gas stove. We've always had electric. I don't have a grill. They're a pain because you have to buy one every 6 years, 7 years. They fall apart. So I've learned how to grill a steak in that gas oven on broil. It's as good as if it came from the grill outside. The trick is to use a digital thermometer to get the internal temperature. If you want a medium rare steak, you take the steak out of the oven at 125 degrees because it's going to still cook for 10 more minutes. And by the time you get ready to eat it, it will be medium rare, or maybe a little bit more on the medium side. We had the brother-sister reunion with the siblings every 2 years. Try not to let it go over 3 years. Linda's children love me as if I was their second father. Stevie calls me all the time, more than the rest of them. Michael's in his own world, but he will call me occasionally. And he's glad to see me when he sees me, and I'm glad to see him. Shelby works. You can send Shelby a text, and you might get an answer in 3 days because she's busy. She's got 3 kids, and she works for Center for Primary Care. She's a data analyst, the only data analyst in the whole company. So she does well over there, but she stays very, very busy. And and then Melissa will, I'll see Melissa at functions. She's out in Thompson with her husband, Rudy. And they had a house that was built out there that they bought, and they built a pool, and they're doing well. They're all doing well. And so we all stay together. It's important for family to stay together, to know where you came from. And the way you do that is you simply find a reason to meet and be together. You know, have a dinner, invite everybody over. She's famous, Linda's famous for doing that. I'm cooking pierogies. They're all from Pennsylvania, Linda's people. And that's a big deal up there. You know, if you ever had a pierogi, they're good. It's like a little dumpling with either cheese or potatoes inside or something, but they're excellent. And the way Linda cooks them is the old way, and it's so good. And Stevie Lynn loves them. Every time she comes down, she wants pierogies. So Linda will make them. It's a big deal. She makes them from scratch. Takes the flour, puts it together, makes the dough or whatever. But anyway, they're delicious when she makes them. Michael can eat 50 of them if you let him. I think my greatest achievement is raising a successful group of children with the help of their mothers. And the other thing would be the fact that I had my own business for 38 years. And also, I am very pleased with where I am today. Everybody that comes and look at this place say they really like it. The husbands of Stevie, and well, I don't know if Scott said it, but Ben Burwinkle, Shelby's husband, and Melissa's husband, Rudy, when they came and first saw it, they're like, oh, I could live here. And the wives go, fine, get you a place. This is a great bachelor pad. I said, it's not a bachelor pad. I am glad that where I am at my station in life, I don't know how much longer I'll be here, but I'm not worried about it. If it's time for me to go, then I'm completely at ease with that. I have no problem. I don't want to. I mean, I'm still enjoying life very much, but raising the kids, knowing where I am today and how it's easy for me to live like I'm living, the money's not a problem. If you like doing something and you're good at it, money will follow. You don't have to worry about it. It will come to you. And they can't pay you enough to do something you don't like to do. I learned that early. If you don't like to do it, get out of it, because you're hurting yourself and you're hurting the people you're doing the job for. But if you find out, I learned that back when I was in North Carolina working for the mill. The general manager told me that. So that's it. That would be what I consider my biggest pride to the kids and where I am today, and the fact I was in business so long.